There's a lot going on in the world, and what we're doing is actually very much a part of this because it's changing our position. And so that's one of the things that we want to talk about today, because we've been talking about where science meets the soul of man for peace. And so before I get into it, I just want to welcome all the members of the community, as this is a North American teaching. Yes, it is, but we have a tremendous international team here. And furthermore, we have the Spanish team in the background doing the simulcast. And so I've been instructed to speak a little bit slower so that there's a little bit more time to do the translation. So please keep that in mind. And I'm so glad that you're all here. We try and convey more knowledge or have a deeper understanding. And so today, this is the Kesh Foundation Spaceship Institute Teaching in Plasma Science. We're at the intermediate insight level, and the rate of change is what we're talking about today. My name is Alexander, I'm from Canada, and it is March 27th, 2022. This is the Kesh Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. We've been trying to maintain some kind of continuity and some kind of organization, because the whole purpose that was started out and of this particular session was started out October the 14th in 2020 with the basic teaching. And it's quite appropriate to see the accolades going to Raphael, because he was instrumental in motivating us to do this. And he knows how many hours we've spent putting all this together. And I'm very grateful for his efforts, his organization, and the whole team. There's an extremely long list on that team. And so I owe an enormous amount of gratitude for that. And there will be a lot of repercussions as a result, because despite the fact that we have so many team members, this is in the archives and will continue for new knowledge seekers. But this teaching is not just for new knowledge seekers, it is for mature knowledge seekers as well, because in addition to this effort here, there's an enormous body of knowledge, an enormous body of teaching. And I want to thank the Brazilian community on Friday for recognizing the achievements of one of the outstanding Canadians. Yeah, we'll talk about Rick Cremond and his efforts have been actually unbelievable. And if you were to ask me which country he's from, the last country that I would say is from Canada. And I can say that because I am Canadian. But his efforts have transcended the personalities and has actually transcended all the continents of this planet. And so what we've tried to do is to bring together this teaching in such a way that new knowledge seekers can come on and fast track, because we're talking about the amalgamation of thousands of hours of teaching. And so the rate of change is what we're talking about today, because for some of us, we are going to change very, very quickly. And for some of us, it's going to take an awfully long time. And it's already taken an awfully long time. And so awfully and long. And we've broken it down for your enjoyment into basic, intermediate, and advanced classes. And so today we are into intermediate insight, which is going on down the road quite a bit. And we have to go down the road. And even hopefully for new knowledge seekers, this gives you some grounding. But also you have to understand that mature knowledge seekers will become future teachers. And so we're hopeful that this will be helpful also for you all. As the rate of change is what we're talking about today, and we need to reflect on what is the cause of the change and what is the instrument of change. So we've identified in the last few weeks that there is an original feeding system. And likewise, there's also a feedback system. And because plasma is a two-way street, the feedback system is a welcome system because it allows us to adjust. This feedback system comes from our environment. So it's an adjustment of the environmental system. And it's manifest as a feedback system. And so if we look at this tube here, and so this happens to be a tube of paint, it could be a tube of toothpaste, a tube of whatever. And you can see that the contents of the tube are inside the tube. And you wonder, is the content of the tube wanting to get out? Well, that's debatable. And if we take the cap off, is the content coming out? And that's also debatable. So we all know from this that we could gently squeeze the contents out. But we could also squirt the contents out. And so that depends on a pressure, an external pressure. And we could go one step further here and empty out all the contents of the tube. And so we would end up with two separate questions. Would the contents of the tube want to get back into the tube? Well, I can tell you that that would be a very messy process. I've tried to do that. It doesn't work. So we have to go back to the original feeding system. In other words, feed the tube from the back end and then seal it off. But the other thing, and this is the point of today's exercise, is that the force that determines whether or not the contents of this tube are going to come out are unseen. And so we don't know what the cause of that change is going to be. And we don't know what the instrument of that change is going to be. Because it could be the gentle squeezing of your fingers, or it could be the stomping of a jet boot. And so that affects the rate of change. And so how do we know the difference? And this sounds very basic. And in a way, it is very basic. Because what we've come to realize is that we made a commitment to return to the moon by June the 6th, and it's T-minus 70 days and counting. And so there's a lot of pressure coming on because the time is running out. So the rate of change is determined by how much time we have and how much of a desire we have to complete our task. And so we're at the point now where man has to leave the nest, so to speak, just like a little birdie. A little birdie has to leave the nest and has to learn how to fly. And we have a lot of ways that we can fly. But we have debates and we have tugging at our existence. And so this whole point and this whole discussion and the relevance today is that we've all achieved and come to a point of an existential crisis. And so what we're talking about literally are the books of Mr. Keshe, book number 1, which is the original universal order of creation of matters. And we could say that that is the source. And then we look at the origin of the universe, and we are part of that universe, and we have a soul, and so our soul is part of that universe. But our soul can be the origin of another universe. And so there is a way to connect the source and the soul, and that would be the link, and that is represented in book number 2, The Structure of Light. And the thing, when we look at the light, we don't know if it's backwards or if it's upside down. And it's true in space. It's only in Earth you know which way is up, unless you yourself are upside down. But you would know you were upside down because you know which way is up and which way is down. But if you don't have a point of reference, then you don't know. And if you don't have a point of reference, that means it's not visible. So your reference point has vanished. And so this becomes the subject of dynamic plasma. The dynamic plasma being the balance between the feeding system and the feedback system. And so we realize that there are components of this feeding system. And so that affects the rate of change. But we have limitations, and we call that the soul limitations. And so this may be overwhelming to look at, but what we're talking about is the breakdown of the components associated with the soul of man, and the breakdown of the components associated with the soul of the body. And somehow there's a transformation from our souls to our transportation system, namely the body. And there's a motivation. There's an emotion. And that emotion is at the crosshairs of the soul of man and the soul of the body as one reference point. And the other reference point is the emotion of the past and the emotion of the future. And so in this point of interaction, we're trying to maintain some kind of anchorage. And it's quite easy for us to anchor ourselves to this planet. And our viewpoint would be everything from this planet. But the fact of the matter is that we are anchored to our soul. And the feeding of the soul and the feeding of the planet are as different as the feeding of the sun and the feeding of the earth. So in essence, the feeding is from the sun and the feedback is from the earth. And so our arrival here is the emotion of presence. And our arrival came with trust. And that trust was the interaction of the soul of man and the soul of the body as determined by the fields of inertia between the soul of the sun and the soul of the earth. But we are all independent. And as being independent, we're also variable. So the rules are the same, but we maintain independence. Then the question becomes, and independence of what? And so where do we go from here? And how fast do we go? And we all want to go, don't we? But let's clear the clutter. Let's make this a lot simpler. Our soul limitations are based on our interpretation of the emotion of presence. And our emotion of presence is determined by the feeding system plus the feedback system. Feeding plus the feedback, in other words, together. It's a two-way street. And so when we look at, and someone says, can you define plasma? And you say, well, plasma is a kind of energy state. So what do you mean by energy state? Well, there are higher energy states and there are lower energy states. And so there is a plasmagen state as different from a plasma state. And what is that difference? The difference is that all of these states are a plasma state. The physical state is a plasma state. But the plasma state is a plasma state. So there's a difference. The plasmagen state is a precursor for the matter state. And the GANS is an intermediary. The GANS is a kind of energy state and a very strong energy state. So there is something that we can use to relate to this. And so that is, we understand that we have a physical state, but we also have a dream state. And so the dream state is also an energy state. But this state transcends the limitations of science. So in many ways, the limitations of science affects the limitations of the soul. But we didn't say which science. So this question is very important because it affects us existentially. We've come to an existential crisis, and it's very important. And I say this because we need to decide what is important. And if important is not important, well, what is important then? So we have come to the point where we are traveling through uncharted skies. And the reason for this is because historically speaking, we've depended on our physicality. And when we look at the historical relationship, we find that not only are we financially bankrupt, but we're morally bankrupt. And our society is bankrupt in another way. And so all of us become students. What we see teaches us. And as such, we become the students. And so what we decide to learn is based on what we can hear. And what we decide to believe is based on what we see. But the thing is, we have choices. And the question is, are we making the right choices? And what is the basis of making those choices? But we do know that there is a default position because we're here. Hello. We came here with trust. And now we're looking how to navigate. And can we navigate with trust? Well, depending is part of that trust, isn't it? Having a dependence is part of that depending. And how can you depend on undependables? So this is why we say, well, we have to sort this out. And the thing is, can we get elevated? And so we're seeing some rough roads ahead. And we're talking about change. Well, what exactly will change? And so we say, well, let's tune into the universe, because the universe seems to have figured this out, and turn on to the energy that is given to us daily, regularly, on demand, and drop out of our physical dependence. So when we look at the physical science, we see that we have a verification and validation requirement, which represents transmission and transition of energy. And at the crosshairs of those two is our point of existence. And our point of existence is a transmutation result. It's a result of the transmutation. In order to achieve that, there had to be a balance to create a maggraph. And so that maggraph was balanced. That's what makes it a maggraph, but it's invisible. What is it that's visible? The confirmation of our existence. That's what's visible. But what it doesn't show is the precursor to our confirmation. And our inability to see that is not only limiting our soul, but is limiting the rate of change. And so when we look at our emotion of presence, the question is it feeding specific, or is it feedback specific? So we know that our presence is soul specific because our soul brought us here. And now we're experiencing the emotion of presence. And so that in between, which is the maggraph positioning, is invisible. So the continuation of that feeding is something that we have to make choices and differentiate. And so what we have is a game plan, if you will, on what exactly is principal matter and where exactly does it come from. And so it doesn't come exactly because in outer space, we have things called PM ticks. They're magnetical because they're giving, and that giving is a feeding. And so there's a convergence of energy and there's a divergence of energy. And at some point in time, all of these energies are diluted and they come together. They come together as an energy pack, and they manifest into the principal matter, what we call antimatter. So there's nothing anti about antimatter. It is principal matter. And it is from this principal matter that we somehow have a conversion into our physicality. And so the dark matter becomes the transition matter. And so it is at this point that we are converting what is non-visible, which we call the plasmagen, to what is visible, which we call the matter. And there is a conversion into a gravitational field, which we call a maggraph. And this maggraph interacts with our feedback system, which is our earth, our environment. And that feedback system that we call inertia. That is the field interaction between our maggrav field and the field of the Earth, which is our environment field. So this is kind of the roadmap of how the energy moves. And so when we look at the natural plasma, we find that we can relate mathematically and say, well, the transmission is the x-axis, and through that we have rotation. And the y-axis is our transition. And so we can see that that goes through the poles. And so this creates crosshairs. And at the point where the crosshairs cross over is the crossover point. And at that point, something becomes nothing because it's the vanishing point. And we know that something is missing because every time we try and do some kind of calculation, we always find that we have to fudge something. There's always something missing. So even in the relationship between our circular area or the volume of the sphere, we use pi as a reference. And what is pi? Its pi is 3 and a bit. The relationship of 3 and a bit times whatever we want to do to calculate the geometries of our various dimensions. One of those dimensions is our emotion. And another dimension is our soul. But interestingly enough, the emotion goes through different dimensions, and the soul goes through different dimensions, and there's a crossover. And at that point of that crossover is what we need to practice. We call it target practice. So we see that when we're looking at surface to volume ratios, we compare the perimeter of a circle and the area of a circle. And we see that in the formula, pi is involved. And so pi is 3 and a little bit. How much is that bit? It's always something, but we don't know what it is. So we use it and to determine 2 dimensions. So we use a fudge factor to determine a specific sequence. And then if we go to the volume of the sphere and compare that to the surface of the sphere, we see we can go to 3 dimensions. But we still have to fudge the mathematical equation. And the point is that in order for us to observe this, we are none of these dimensions. We are in a 4th dimension because we're the observer. But we are also probably the fudger because we're having difficulty figuring out mathematically how we're doing these things. And if we can't figure that out mathematically, then how do we know the rate? And what are we talking about is the rate of change. And so we're trying to determine the direction of energy flow. And so we know that energy is always in motion. And so it'd be nice to know which direction it's going. And in order to determine that, we determine that strength is a factor. So the direction and strength of flow is a factor in understanding field strength. And so the field strength is a transmutation of the transmission and transition flow of energy. And that is the z-axis, the 3rd dimension. And it is now that when you have this field strength, now it determines its position through what? Through that 4th dimension of a plasma at the core. Because that is the result of the manifestation. And there are other plasmas, and they have plasma at the core as well. And so when you have these plasmas relating to other plasmas, there's an interaction, and that creates a dynamism. And so this is the fundamental principle of energy in motion. And so the energy is always positive. It's the direction of the motion that has the charge. And so what determines the energy in motion with respect to direction and strength? So we find that there is a synergy where 1 and 1 is more than 2. And where did that come from? Because it's unseen. And then there's a susceptibility. And where did that come from? Because it's unseen. And so you have relationship references. And where did that come from? Because that is unseen. And so we find that in our existence on Earth, which is physical, we can actually transcend different ranges where we have seen and unseen within our environment. And so the energy in motion is dependent on the gradient charge versus the charge gradient. What does that mean? So let's do a little bit of definitions here and introduce the word isobars. Isobars in meteorology, and I know meteorology implies the study of meteors, but actually it's the study of weather. And so we create weather maps. And so an isobar is a line on a map that connects 2 points. And these points have to have the same atmospheric pressure at a given time. And so when we draw these lines, we find that we create a picture. And so each of these isobars are lines of constant or equal pressure on a weather map. So there are different pressures on a weather map, but the constant pressures are connected with these isobars, right? Now, before we go further, we've heard the word isotopes. So what are isotopes? Isotopes are atoms of the same element. Okay. However, you could have the same number of atoms, but have a different mass. Okay. So that means because an atom has, as an element, a certain number of protons and electrons. So that doesn't change, but the mass number does. And so these differences are called isotopes of the same element. In chemistry, we also have isobars. What is that? These are atoms of different elements. So different elements have a different number of atoms. And this is where the question comes in. They could have the same mass number. So for instance, a case in point, we know that carbon, we say, is carbon 12. And the next one up is nitrogen, and we say nitrogen is nitrogen 14. But we also know that we can have carbon 14. So carbon 14 and nitrogen 14 have a different number of atoms, but the same mass number. going back to the weather map, the significance of the isobars on the weather map is it gives us a picture of different pressures. And what is specific about these pressures is that some are considered high pressure and some are considered low pressure. And so there's a relationship. And what we can see is that there's a difference in how far apart these lines are. So where we have lines that are farther apart, we would say that that is a lower gradient. And where we have lines closer together, we would say that that is a higher gradient. So a higher gradient would reflect a high pressure, and a lower gradient would reflect a low pressure. Well, what does that mean? Well, in the Northern Hemisphere, high pressure means that the area of influence, the field represented by high pressure, rotates. Rotates in a clockwise direction. And the low pressure also rotates, but it rotates in a counterclockwise direction. So we have a clockwise and a counterclockwise rotation at the same time. Well, how can you be one and the same in the same Northern Hemisphere? And then, not to confuse things, but it's opposite in the Southern Hemisphere. That's right. The high pressure is counterclockwise, the low pressure is clockwise. But that's not what's important. What's important is that the high pressure, being high pressure, sends the energy out. So therefore it's magnetical. The low pressure is drawing it in. So therefore it's gravitational. So when we say gradient charge, it's like the gases are moving from the high pressure areas to the low pressure areas. And when we say charge gradient, we're saying the bigger the difference between the pressures, the faster the air will move. And when air moves, we call it wind. And the question is, how strong is the wind? Because that's what affects change. So the rate of change and the winds of change are the same. And so what we see on the weather map, we see in plasma as well, where the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. That's the wind of change. But it's a two-way street, you see, because when we look at how the universe is created, and it's created from energy, and this energy is always in motion, so it's always positive. And the only way that we can contain it is to contain it inside a field. So when we see on the cover of book number 1, we see how these three fields, the matter, dark matter, and antimatter, come together in one field. But these three fields are 3 dimensions. And so there's a feeding and there's a feedback. At the point of convergence, inner center, there's something that's missing, something unaccounted for, something that's disappeared. And that disappearance is a manifestation of the conflict point. So you find when 2 fields come together and they're both the same, there will be a point of conflict in the center. How do we resolve this point of conflict? So now we understand that the basic rules of plasma science is the understanding of the magnetical fields and how they attract and repel each other. If we follow this formula, it's very easy because it's a two-way street in every direction. Oh, there's more than two directions. Well, a two-way street only has two ways of traffic flow, doesn't it? Well, it all depends on your point of view. Are you the car that's driving, or are you the pedestrian that's crossing? And so which direction are you going? So the point is that what you're looking at is a MAGRAV condition. And so it's from that point of a MAGRAV condition that determines whether it's magnetical or gravitational. So when it's magnetical, there's an emission of energy. And when it's gravitational, there's an absorption of energy. So in other words, the winds flowing out are emissive and the winds coming in are absorptive, right? And so when we look at the decay of a neutron, we find that there's a difference in mass. And we said before in one of the previous classes that we always fudge this difference because we can't calculate. And so what is that difference? When the neutron decays into an electron-proton combination, the difference is the PM ticks. The release of the PM ticks is the product. The source of the release is the transmutation from the neutron to the electron-proton. This is a two-way street. Didn't we say this was a two-way street? So this ray motion is part of creation. But this motion can be a natural decay or a natural creation. So if a neutron is creating an electron-proton combination, then the neutron experiences a decay. But if this neutron changes its field strength, then it has to release energy. Because if it's going to be a decay, it can't have the same amount of energy that it had before. So that creation is natural, and we call that natural decay. And fortunately, in our physicality, we have the ability to transcend both the creation and the decay, because there is a bond between those two field strengths. And because we can't see that bond, we have to fudge that as well. And so we, as the observers, are constantly fudging things. But we know that there is a bond. And so we can surmise that there is some kind of magnetical gravitational relationship between each and every component of the structure. So whether it's creation, where the neutron has a connection to the electron and the neutron has a connection to the proton, there is also a release of the PM ticks, which in of itself is a magnetical gravitational construct. In other words, MAGRAV. And in the decay, there's a relationship between the neutron and the electron, and likewise between the neutron and the proton. And the release of energy which is the release of PM ticks, which in itself is a magnetical gravitational relationship called a maggrav. But in order to maintain this bond, there has to be a reverse, just like it is on the weather map between the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. What was clockwise in one side becomes counterclockwise on the other side. So we find that there has to be a connection between the neutron and the electron-proton combination on the other dimension. And that is unseen. And there is a giving and there's a taking. So there are two connections. The covalent bond. And so we find that through the process of creation, cells multiply. And the anomaly of cell multiplication through cellular division is now explained. And what is the motivating factor? Well, life wants to live. What is the factor? And so we call it radar love. You can't see it, can't touch it, can't hold on to it. So somehow, some way, we have to fudge that. So when we're looking at flow, if we were to take two bodies of water and we wanted to flow the water from one to the other, we all understand about terracing. And terracing is where you have one body of water higher than the other body of water. And so if we were to connect these two bodies of water with, let's say, a hose or a waterfall, so because of the gradient difference, the connection would be by gravity. And so the higher body of water would flow to the lower body of water. But if we were at the same level, what we would have to do to get the water from one side to the other side is we would have to pump the water over. So in other words, to complete this bridge, this water bridge, we would have to either put a siphon or a pump to get the water from one side to the other side. And so this siphon or this pump is not part of this construct. It is outside the construct. Once we finish the pumping action, we can complete the connection and make the water bridge. But that doesn't mean that the water will flow. All that means is that it's a maggrav, where the one side would be balanced off with the other side. But what we would do is create an environment where we would have an opportunity to take advantage of the capillary effect. And so what is the capillary effect? If you daisy chain these bodies of water together, because of the capillary effect, they can all stay at the same gravitational level. But an external force can come in, and as such will cause a flow. And so that flow will go away from the inflow, and it will continue to go until it goes out. We don't know where it's coming in from, and we don't know where it's going out to. We're just looking at the daisy chain connection here. So we know there's a direction of flow because there's flow coming in and going out. But do we know the strength of the flow? Well, we can determine that where it's coming in has the highest pressure. And so every time it goes from one body to another body, it's going from a higher to a lower pressure. One moment, please. Every time it goes from one higher body to a lower body, there is a relationship until at some point it goes out. And so the pressure coming in builds up. What is the rate of buildup? Well, it's going to be determined by the rate of inflow. And so the rate of the inflow is what we call the charge gradient. So when we looked at our musical chairs, the game that we were playing, the loser leaves. But the thing is, in the universe, there are no losers. There are no winners or losers. There's just a repositioning. And so instead of going around the field with the musical chairs and the field gets smaller and smaller and the number of participants gets less and less, in this version of musical chairs, the players go to a smaller ring. So as such, we still maintain the same number of players, but we have a smaller and smaller field to work with. So what we find is that when we started out the game on the outside ring, and we had a loser, that loser had to leave. But in the game of plasma, that loser has nowhere to go. So it has to stay in the game. So it has to go to a next ring, an inner ring. And so that yellow arrow points to the loser. And so you understand as this continues until you get to the smallest ring, you find that you have players not only on 2 rings, but you have players on 3 rings. And so the question comes is, well, what happens if you increase the pressure? In other words, what happens if you bring in more players? Well, there's no room on the outside ring. On the next ring inside, well, you have room for another 6 players. That leaves 2. Those 2 have to go to an inner ring. And so the yellow arrows point to the 2 losers. So you can understand that as this game keeps going, we're getting more and more losers and less space for these losers. And so they have to go somewhere. And so what we're really finding is that if we were to dam up the outflow, the pressure would increase. Now, what happens? Now, you keep bringing it in and it doesn't flow out, something's going to happen and there will be an overflow. When we introduced the cups of life, what we did was we introduced this overflow because you started out with the cups of life and you created GANs. And that GANs is fundamental to the way life operates. And so these cups of life were never called the cups of the pandemic, because the pandemic was a transitional thing, and the life is an eternal thing. And so to understand the eternal, we have to look beyond the transitional. We started with the physicality. We created a magnetical and gravitational field. We've seen that we can do that with different elements. And we've seen that we have a reference, cup number 1 being emotional and cup number 2 being physical. And if we had energy requirements from each of these cups, then we should keep them at least a meter apart, so that we have the emotional GANs and the physical GANs field strength. But clearly, we are emotional and we are physical together. And within each of these cups, we were able to create ganses. And if we just refer to cup number 1, we had a lot of ganses in there. We had zinc GANs and copper GANs and CO2 GANs and calcium GANs. And those were ganses. But then we created a film that we called amino acid on top. And then we had inside the cup, we had the water. And so the amino acid film was like an amino acid GANs. And the water that was inside the cup, I'm sorry. Yeah, the amino acid film was an amino acid GANs. And the water inside the cup was like a water GANs. And so when we put all the 5 cups together, what we call the cup of the soul, the cup of emotion, the cup of physicality, the cup of the earth, and the interaction, which we call the cup of inertia, they collectively created a magnetical field and a gravitational field. And at that point, we were able to bring the soul in. And the soul is you. And you have all these fields. And so you don't know where this came from. Well, it came from the air, didn't it? And look, we took away the physicality and we were left with the GANs. But the GANs is physical. So then what happens inside the GANs? And we found that there's a hole in the GANs. And we looked inside and everything was gone. And so we determined that that's where the soul is. So it was the soul as an external component that was determining the susceptibility. And what we came originally with the original physical construct, that is gone. So we said when 2 forces come together, there's an enhancement, a self-enhancement, which we call the universal harvesting. But there's a self-consumption, which is a harvesting from others. We call that loosh harvesting, right? So we have choices. And many times these choices create conflicts. And even conflicts of interest are conflicts. So how do we have conflict resolution? So we find that when 2 forces come together, there has to be a change in direction and goes through a different dimension. And so if we have a conflict on the transmission side, which is rotation, and if we have a conflict on the transition side, which is polarity, where does that go? So we find that when we look at the fundamental principle of the twinity, the speed of rotation of the plasma now has an effect that changes the rate. And it's the speed of rotation of the plasma of the electron, which is dictated by the amount of magnetic fields. But these magnetic fields are transferred from a large twin plasma of the proton to the plasma of the smaller twin plasma of the electron. And that energy is gone, has disappeared. The vanishing point, the elusive fudge factor, where we are trying to see what is the confirmation of this vanishing point. Well, the confirmation is that there's a transmutation at the crossing over of the vanishing point, the crossing over of the transmission and transition. That becomes the point of existence, the transmutation point of existence. And our lack of understanding the difference between the plasmatic reality and the physical reality contributes to our limitations, our soul limitations. So our soul limitations are dictated by our understanding of matter plasma. And so the physical plasma is really the feedback system for the matter-gen plasma, which is sourced from the feeding system. And so when we say which is the dominant system, this affects the change. And this affects the rate of change. And do we need to have change? And so we find that the only thing that's constant in our life is change. And as such, we have different gradient charges. We have different plasma charges. We have different compositions of different plasma charges. And this all comes from the aminogen, which manifests itself into the dream energy of the spirit. And the dream energy of the spirit is an indomitable spirit that comes from the soul. And so the dilution of all of these come together in a physical destination state. So the feeding system is a dynamic plasma transfer state. And the feedback system is a physical destination state. And so this is the relationship which we can see when we create a universal cup or a stacker cup. And to understand how these things work requires practice. And we're having difficulty in finding the bullseye. Mother Nature doesn't seem to have this problem. It always hits the bullseye. Because now we have to understand what is the difference between the stacker and the universal reality. In both cases, two fields come together and form another. So this is the definition of manifestation. And it's the plasma feeding that leads to this manifestation. So that's why this manifestation could be non-tangible or tangible, non-visible or visible, plasmatic or physical, because there is always a plasmatic reality. And in some cases, there's a physical reality. So whichever manifestation we're talking about, that is a form artifact. And so our emotion of presence is also a form artifact. And what is it an artifact of? Energy and motion. And so everything that we're looking at is actually a MAGRAV feeding conversion. In other words, because we can't stop the energy, we can only bring it in and bring more in. And so that becomes our gravitational action as represented by the blue arrows. But in order to bring more in, we have to emit more out. And so that becomes magnetical as represented by the red arrows. And so that becomes our MAGRAV condition. But our MAGRAV condition can grow. And as such, therefore, it has to change dimensions. And where does it go when you can't see it? Does it disappear? And so we have to determine what is our default point of view. Our point of view is from our point of view. Our point of view is from our soul's point of view. Our physical manifestation is from our soul's point of view. Our physical manifestation comes from the interaction of the Earth's point of view with the sun's point of view. So there's a conversion. There's a conversion, which is the conversion of the transformation from our soul to the transportation system of our physicality. So when we talk about the rate of change, when we talk about the cause of change and the instrument of change, so the question becomes, is this rate of change determined by the original feeding system, or is it determined by the adjustment of the feedback system? And so the rate of change really is environment specific, because it's where we are, isn't it? What I'd like to do is to review a basic teaching to understand Ganses better now that we have this insight. Because when we look at the Ganses that we created in the cup of life, we have to remember that these things are monatomic. They have an extremely high surface to volume ratio, high degree of susceptibility. And we understand that different energy fields have a different order of magnitude. So in other words, minimum 10 times stronger. And so we see that in the physicality, we have these perpendicular force fields, and these force fields represent force fields of plasmatic attraction and plasmatic repulsion. And so we say, oh, okay, well, mathematically, we can say that the Gans particles are like monatomic icosahedrons. And energy has a direction and strength of flow. So what determines that? Mathematically, we could say the higher surface to volume ratio has a higher susceptibility, and the higher susceptibility would have to have a higher order of magnitude. So therefore, the Gans has this affinity to give and take energy. But it has a funny kind of twinity. As a solid, you can see the GANs. It's on a physical plane. But as a gas, it's on an emotional plane. And this is the basic construct of us and our bodies. So we find that in our bodies, we have our physicality and we are definitely affected emotionally. And so we find that our body is actually a GANS spaceship. So in effect, we're already in outer space. The thing about this GANS and its affinity is that it's highly reactive. And it reacts to emission spectra. So the emission spectra is energy. And it's not one energy, but it's a combination of energy, and that's why it's a spectrum. It's a cross-section of energy, different kinds of energy. But it doesn't just react in one way. It literally assists or facilitates absorption. And as such, GANS becomes a natural communicator. And this is the part that a lot of people don't like, because it's a natural lie detector. And being a natural lie detector, therefore, it's also a natural love detector. And because it's highly reactive, it is a superconductor. And it's a superconductor at room temperature. And so it's a superconductor of whatever you want to communicate. Whatever you want to communicate. You want to communicate love? Do you want to communicate lies? So that means that the GANS state manifests the matter state, the capital M matter state. And we know that the nanostate also manifests the capital M matter state. So we find that the nanostate, the GANS state, and the capital M matter state, these all are in a plasmatic state. But the thing is that the GANS and nano is also in a physical state. And we know that the capital M matter state, what we call the matter gem, manifests the small m matter state. And we know that the small m matter state is the weaker. So this is where the plasmatic state, therefore, being stronger, manifests the physical state being weaker. And so now we understand that the plasma science is what creates and manifests the physical science. So when we're defining the GANS state, okay, it's a kind of energy state, but it is higher than nanostate. And if we're changing states, then it's higher by at least an order of magnitude. And it is in a superconducting condition. And it is a superconductor at room temperature. But it is earthbound. So therefore, the GANS state is an earthbound plasmatic state. So we find that the GANS has a charge gradient. And so what we say, the charge gradients cut across flux lines. They're transitional energies. So the flux lines actually run along the surface. Flux lines are transmission energies. And depending on how close these lines are together, when we connect all the isobars, that determines the steepness. And the closer the bars are together, the steeper the gradient. And we know that the higher energy flows to the lower energy. Okay, so the gradient flow, if it's transition, cuts across the flux lines. And if it's transmission, it goes along the flux lines. Okay. And interestingly, water can exchange energy also. In other words, water can give and take. And GANS gives and takes energy. So water and GANS have a similar affinity. And when GANS can exchange magnetical energy, and GANS can exchange gravitational energy. Yeah, it's a two-way street. So now, when we look at the GANS and the GANS motion, what does it mean? Well, if you are going to transition energy, that means you are going to transition energy levels. So before that you can transition an energy level, because the energy is in motion, there has to be a cause. And so that cause is the giving of energy. So you have to give one to drop one. You have to give energy so that you can go down level by level by level. So when you look at the GANS and how it floats inside your cup, and you say, oh, well, you know, the GANS is floating down because of gravity. No, the GANS is moving. The GANS is moving because of energy exchange. So to maintain its Magrav condition, it has to give and take energy from itself, because you cannot stop that energy to move. But in order for it to move inside the cup of life, it has to transition. And so as such, it's going to transition, just like our musical chairs, it's going to go down and down and down, step by step. And how fast it goes down is going to be determined by its steepness. So we have a gradient transition. That's your motion. And how fast it goes, you have your transition gradient. That's your steepness. So when you have, and you look at the vertical people, and they have growth, and they have the plants that grow, and they create a flower, and then that flower goes to seed. Well, what is causing that change? And so there's a point between the transition where it meets the transmission, and it transmutates into something else. And that's something else we can't see, because what it was disappears. So what we now know is that at this crossing point, which we call the vanishing point, becomes also the point of transparency, because the plasma science is a two-way street. So if what you have disappears, that what you get comes from the unknown, and the unknown becomes the known. In other words, your emotional presence comes not only from your environment, so being environment specific, but it also comes from the intention. So it becomes fed by you being intention specific. But what happens if that intention is ignorant? In other words, you are aware of your environment as a feedback system, and you are aware of your soul as being the feeding system, and you decide to ignore that, that's being ignorant. So then your intention becomes exclusive of the feeding system and becomes exclusive of the feedback system. So the feeding is exclusive of the feedback, and it excludes the feeding. You can see the limitations of the emotional change. And so let's change it. This is how you change it. Change the intention to feed from your soul. That becomes the soul intention specific feeding system, which feeds the emotion of presence, which is what brought you here in the first place, as in a trusting manner. And your existence and coexistence is determined by the environment, and that is the feedback system. And if the feedback system is true, then the system will flourish. And if the feedback system is bankrupt, then we have what we have. And so the rate of change becomes your point of view, and you have to make that decision. And that decision means all you have to do is just default back to what is normal. You see, the majority is normal, and the majority of us seek freedom and emancipation. And why is that? Well, because the universe is normal. And so the earth, being part of the universe, also seeks freedom and emancipation. And so when we understand this, then we understand the soul sequencing and how it affects, where the soul of the sun plus the soul of the earth attracts the soul of the man. And the soul of the earth then plus the soul of the man attracts the soul of the body. And then the soul of the earth plus the soul of the body manifests the physicality of the body. And this pathway is the default pathway of manifestation. And the target shooting is very, very accurate. It always hits the bullseye. And so we have, as the Keshe Foundation, gifted vision enhancement systems to the US military to recover from PTSD, because what it does is defaults to the plasmagen interaction. That's the original soul manifestation pathway to soothe the pain of whatever they have witnessed, which is contrary to universal law. And so it's not that it's man-made that's the problem. It's understanding the role of man. And so to assist us, because we need it. It's our feedback assist. We have the vertical enhancement unit, which helps our emotional well-being, and the horizontal enhancement unit, which helps our physical well-being. These are very, very simplistic descriptions, but it's the difference between being self-consuming at the expense of others, where you bind energy and limit the possibilities. And you realize that when the feeding is exclusive from the feedback, then in order to make the change, you have to become suddenly witness to the vanishing point of change. And that affects the rate of change. You see, and how you know this is when you take the conditions off. See, because conditional change involves conditions, whereas unconditional change provides whatever you need. That's the basis of plasma feeding. It's a very effective feeding system. And so when you return to this plasma feeding, you find that not only will it be sudden, but it'll be effective. And so that can happen to you. But what happens collectively? We're all looking for the essentials for life: air, water, food, shelter. And we know the difference when we don't have it, because the feeders provide, but the terrorists deny. And how can you tell which is the default position? How can you tell which is which? So when we remember that we have ceramic cups, and we can't see the difference between a conventional teacup and a ceramic cup of sweet or pressure, or a ceramic cup of life. And when we fill the cup of tea with tea, we don't know if it has sugar or not, because the sugar is diluted inside. And so when we create the ceramic cups for the plants, we find that the plants flourish. We don't see the GANs in the ceramic, but we see the energy dilution to the benefit of the plant. The default position of the universal law of ethics involves field strengths of morality, compassion, and courage, all involving the process of creation. That is the essence of creation. And so whether we're in outer space, inner space, or in Earth space, we understand that each of those is a range, and each of those range can be transcended. And we can transcend from the gravitational aspect of physicality to the magnetical transmutation of the pea stone, and all energy levels in between, as we go from the aminogen state to the post-amino acid state. We're trying to cross the bridge of knowing. And in the bridge of knowing, we don't know where we're going. But now I think this vanishing point on the other side is actually the road to transparency. How can you tell? You can clearly see for miles. All you have to do is look. Know the connection, understand that the plasma is diluted, so that all of us share the benefits. And we know this because we all dream. And we all need to master the art of dreaming. The art of dreaming is the twinity between our physicality and our dream state. But there's more. There's an outer space. And so there's a connection between what we call our earth space, which we are familiar with, and the outer space, which is where we would like to go. And so we know that there's a transition space in between, we call the plasmagen state, and there's a connection. So now we can say, well, if we look at the relationship between the magnetical and the gravitational fields, and they say there's a balance, well, that doesn't mean anything. So what we know that in the balance, scientifically speaking, we have a conservation of magnetical fields. And spiritually speaking, we understand that there's a driver of the soul. And so what's missing is the plasma science is adding, and that is adding to the knowledge. But at what rate of change? That was the question. What rate of change? And so the rate of change involves a dematerialization and a materialization. The dematerialization takes us beyond the vanishing point, and the materialization comes from the point of transparency. This is a relationship, the relationship between outer space and inner space. And there should be no confusion. We have to understand that the universe has a connection, and it doesn't have to be a direct connection. It can be a contiguous connection. That contiguous connection between the feeding and the feedback. The feeding from outer space, the feedback from inner space, and from our position in Earth space. That's why the Universal Council has a connection with the universal community. And so there's a dilemma. And the dilemma is that we are fascinated with the possibility of going into outer space. And those beings who are in outer space, do they have the capability of going into the Earth space? This is a question. Because it's a two-way street. And so the two-way street manifestation is determined by the environment. And we didn't say which environment. All what we're saying is we're looking for the greater oneness with the anomaly that we multiply ourselves through cell division. And that sometimes the addition of what we want is best achieved through subtraction. Because we are the residue. We are the residue of the convergence being attraction, or the divergence being repulsion. We are the residue of the Magravh condition. It is from this Magravh condition that we become an independent variable. Each one connected to the rest of the universe and interdependent therefrom, so that we can reach one. And we reach one through this emotional transformation. And as part of this transformation, we can teach one to understand that we are all one nation, one planet, and one universe. And so this is why the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute is bringing this plasma science in a way. We first of all have to call all the Earth patriots, and they are near and they are far, and we needn't say where or how far. Sign the World Peace Treaty. The World Peace Treaty is important for the physical and emotional transformation rate. The rate of change depends on the source and the balance of the feeding and the feedback systems. So understand that the default position of our soul is what listens to the universal language of freedom. This is why the plasma science needs to be delivered in exchange for peace on Earth. And so we enter the outer space race. Welcome to the outer space age. That's the end of the lesson. Thank you so much all for allowing me to present. Over to you, Mark.
Well, thank you, Alex, for another beautiful teaching and insight into the knowledge of the universe. Maybe it becomes simpler when we start working through our wishes and intentions and through the soul. I know Mr. Keshe was saying that in a few months or years, we're going to look at the matter state totally different. I think I mentioned that earlier. As has been our custom, normally at this point, we give Alex a minute to warm his tea. or whatever he may have there, and ask, is anyone here for the first time? Would you tell us your name and where you're from? I usually just put that out. We welcome you. Well, thank you.
Hi.
Oh, hello, Anna.
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Did I get
Yes.
that right? Hello.
You did. Hi, Mark. My name is Ana Olivero. I am originally from the Dominican Republic, a beautiful island in the Caribbean region, and I live in New York. Thank you very much for allowing me to participate.
And how did you find out about this meeting, if I could ask?
I have been referred to the meeting by one of my unified field instructors, Mr. Cesar Actis. I take a class with him about, sacred geometry, math, and he referred me to one of the participants, and she has been kind to invite me to participate and to listen. So his name is Cesar Actis. He referred me to Liliana, and
Beautiful.
that's how I got here.
Yes, we're all starting to network together. The souls are bringing, and as I shared that story earlier, and I know Marie has joined us. I think she's still here. I was thinking, Marie, on Wednesday, before the soul teaching, of all the people in the Brazilian group, 10,000, 11,000 people. And it came to me that image of the ice, the frozen ice cube with all the fields emanating out from the center. And I thought it was interesting and not coincidental that the next day you had mentioned that you met a knowledge seeker in your country. And you said that knowledge seeker was from Brazil. So I thought that was
true.
that was very interesting. And just to look at that picture with the fields of ice and the rays or the fields coming out of there, I was picturing that the Brazilian Portuguese team was just emanating out and radiating out their fields. So I was thinking that Anna was just going to say a Brazilian knowledge seeker, a Portuguese knowledge seeker, but we welcome, and you can invite your teacher as well. We don't think we're the only ones that have any knowledge to share. So ask your teacher, there's a welcome invitation if they'd like to come in and share any knowledge. Anyone else here for the first time who would like to share their name and where they're from, perhaps?
Well, this is Marie. I'm not new, but I just want to tell about it because I'm so happy that I met this.
I'm happy for you too.
Yeah, someone interested in the same thing that I am, and not living very far from me, because there are not many knowledge seekers in Norway for the moment, but there have been many up through the years. And then I met her, and I was thinking, okay, she had like a foreign name for not a Norwegian name, but it was so strange when she said she was Brazilian. I didn't see that, because in a way there is a lot of Brazilians in my life for the moment. So everything is, I'm surrounded by Brazilians.
And where did you meet? At the supermarket, or did you hold the door for her, or how did that actually come about?
She contacted me.
Oh, directly.
She been to the One Nation, One Planet, One Race. So I knew she was around, and then because I'm pretty busy, So she called, she sent me a message on Telegram. And then I was thinking, okay, let's meet. So we had our first Norwegian Cash Foundation Knowledge Seekers meeting last week. And we have had a lot of ideas of what we want to do in the future. So with this technology and in this country, so that is very, very interesting.
Marie, did you translate it into English? I mean, are we going to get a kind of like a copy of your meeting?
No.
You can start things going.
Yeah. She's from Brazil, but she speaks perfectly Norwegian. So I've been
Wow.
speaking so much English that I've forgotten my language. So it was funny. So I told her that because I think maybe, no, she's not there. I told her that because I've been in Cash Foundation for a long time, and there has been many attempts to make like a group, and there is always a lot of fuss around these groups. And I said, I don't see that I can do that. And she said, oh, I can do it. So it was really good. So I told her that I was a teacher in the private classes and that I can teach. So we're the perfect team.
Excellent. Often I feel that the souls are working it out in a way. I'm sure there's many knowledge seekers I know now too, in New York and so on. Anna, who's just introduced herself, and Azar. But there's nobody that seems to be in my area. And even though I've talked to many, many people, most people that I meet, even if they're a stranger, but yet we haven't really connected or no one seemed to wanted to be a knowledge seeker, even though I'm sure we've opened up new dimensions. They've gone into the knowledge seekers workshop because sometimes they'll pull it right up on the phone and we talk for a little while, but yet there's been no follow-up. But I know the souls in the background are working things out in a way, and they'll surface or they'll come to be present in probably the very near future, as the souls are really doing the work. The physicality is more of the afterthought. So there's a coordination going on, but it's beautiful that we've been enhanced and enlightened and elevated through the work in the Portuguese and the Brazilian team.
Yeah, and I feel it's for my part of the world, I feel it's the right time, actually. I feel that now we have to start working on getting this out to get more people involved, because people need to know this knowledge and the technology and the science.
Yes, can anyone anybody have Telegram North American chat to invite Anna? Perhaps Ed, if you're with us, you could invite her. I'm not exactly sure, but as you said, Marie, we need to start expanding this. And Dennis, if you're still here, you've put something in the chat as well. I don't know if you'd like to read it, or does anyone plan to contact Canadian Space Agency directly, or we have to first hire government levels? I'm not sure what is meant there. But I'm sure the space agencies have been talking. I think Mr. Kesh said that NASA's been aware of the Kesh Foundation and some of this technology, I think, since 1985. So it's been that long that they've been aware of this Kesh plasma technology, but yet haven't really embraced it. But now I guess they're baffled at why they're getting such a gift. And of course, it's to bring it all together. So does anyone plan to contact the Canadian Space Agency? I often think of that large arm on the space station there, and it says Canada on it. And we've seen that arm doing many sorts of different types of work. We did have another question. Yes, we're going to be contacting many different ones. I think of course, all these space agencies talk to each other. And as we see John and NASA starting to work together, if they choose to, and as well as the other teams, and they all seem to want to have this system to start playing with in a way. Mr. Kesh said you could try to go to the moon. I thought we were going to the moon, and maybe we are, but he had mentioned that the others are welcome also to try to go to the moon with this system. But it really is more of the elevation of the soul, it seems. There's almost a two-track, and even with the rockets as well. He said we shouldn't be so presumptuous that our technology is the only technology. Salamia, did you want to bring something?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Hello, Mark. I have two things to add. One request from Romanian community. Yesterday, I have a teaching, and all the people were very, very interested in Mr. Kesh teaching about how to deal with nuclear radiation from an accident, if it will be the case. We are very close to Ukraine, and if it's possible, to contact Mr. Kesh and invite him to teach us about this shield. I know that had before some teaching about a shield against this, but we are not sure we understood well, and maybe it's time to review these procedures and how we can make this shield. And the second is about contacting our governments in order to ask the foundation for this fly unit, because we know that in deep space research, all the powers are cooperating. Russia cooperates with United States, with China, and other
European
Canada.
Space Agency. You have the European Space Agency there, yes?
Yes, of course. And it's urgent now to do this, because this is the only way now to make peace, including our Universal Council and our plasma technology. This is the aim of fly system, to bring cooperation and peace between these superpowers now, which are struggling from their position in the system for the control. We know that Putin wanted to be part of NATO and wanted to be part of cybersecurity pylon of the NATO defense, but it wasn't possible, as far as I understood. And but they collaborate in the deep space and space programs especially Russia collaborate with China, but also has a history with USA and perhaps with European Space Agency.
When you talk about shielding, are you talking about cleaning up material, or are you talking of creating some sort of dome of protection?
Yes, a dome of protection. It was a shield of protection. Yes, a dome of protection.
Yeah. How about the idea of return to sender?
Too?
When there were some things launched out of the oil fields in Saudi, apparently, the Iranians abused the sort of technology to return them to the sender. And I know Mr. Kesh said they didn't want to show the public these pictures because they would see where the missiles had originally been manufactured. And so maybe the return to sender could be the way to implement that. I'm not sure about the shielding per se. You mean creating like a dome that Tom Salas created in a way against the weather in the Dominican Republic?
We study, it was a video from Mr. Kesh, and I received it from Dean in a RIC plasma reactor, if you remember, and we just studied, and people start to create such a shield, but we want to be sure it's correct, and we'll do in a correct manner. We can have leakage from a nuclear plant. We never know. So we have to be prepared. Now is time. But I want to think positively, but anyway, we have to be prepared.
I know the foundation had said they have contacted the IAEA and said they did have enough materials on hand if their cleanup or any sort of leakage needed to be cleaned up. And I think it'll be some sort of repeat of actually what's gone on in Fukushima, where they demonstrated the ability of the materials to contain or hold and not allow that material to interact with the environment. So maybe reviewing some of those teachings would put some light on the subject per se.
Yes, I think that this changing order could avoid a third global war. Could be. We can have peaceful transition. We can have a peaceful transition to a new world order. Because we have a new actor at the international system, like Brazil, like China, India, BRICS country. So we have to take into account perhaps all the players, not only Pax America, and all together to work together, and all nations, as Mr. Kesh said, can get this free knowledge of the space. Is not the monopoly of superpowers of all of these 5 powers, or maybe 5+1. All we have to enjoy in an equal basis this the access to this technology. And now it's time. It's our time.
Yeah, Mr. Kesh did put a rather positive look on what was happening next to your country there in the Ukraine, and didn't think it was going to escalate into anything. He said it was more or less a bunch of barking dogs without teeth, let's say. But of course, he said we'll have to see. Now, in Romania, haven't agreements been initialed that you're receiving a manufacturing? I would think that would be a great way to follow up with the government officials that are involved there to lead into asking, perhaps bringing in one of these systems, the larger systems, as a gift. These are all going to be gifted, as I understand it, in the hundreds. I mean, not in one location, but obviously to every government. So I think that would be a good way for your group to maybe make an inroad into getting the government or the space agency, if I'm sure there is one.
Yes, it is. Yes. So, okay. Thank you very much. I do I do not want to monopolize.
No problem.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I know Randy had a question in here, Alex. Oh, go ahead, Gail. I see your mic is open.
I mean, this is on a personal level. If you, a friend of mine was in Austria during the Chernobyl disaster, and there were governments were going around testing, and the only one who did not have cesium poisoning actually sprayed his farm with his own organic fertilizer that he had. He had no cesium poisoning. And then I'm sorry that I lost the link, but with regards to iodine, I don't know what format. I think one of the knowledge seekers here now probably knows, maybe Jalal, what you can do with the iodine, what format it has to be in, but it will definitely help protect you from radiation and so on. That's just the two. It's something you can do personally if you're afraid. You can prepare something small. Just my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Gail. I know there's a number in the number 5 in the Knowledge Seekers Workshop, number 4, maybe number 3 as well, all having to do with the cleanup, what had happened. And I think we saw last week or the week before part of the video where Mr. Kesh demonstrated some of the nanomaterials and some of the processes of cleaning this up. Alex is saying, hi, Nikolai, welcome back. And again, we'll probably see a number of people returning that have just separated for a moment for whatever reasons. And as Mr. Kesh said, they're sort of bitten by the knowledge and they never really forget it. And they do come back for the most part. I was just looking for that question for Alex from Randy, if I could.
I can read it.
Oh, sure. Why don't you?
Mark?
Thank you.
And then I want to hear what Alex has to say or any other knowledge taker. This was sent to me. Since photons always travel at the speed of light, according to science, from the perspective of the proton, there is no such thing called time. A proton emitted by a galaxy billions of light years away might take billions of years to reach the Earth, but for the proton, 0 time has elapsed during its journey.
Well, I know Mr. Kesh, well, I'll let Alex answer, but from my understanding is, I know he said when you look at the stars and you think that's the light that's coming from 1 billion years ago, this is what we're told in science. But he said, no, that's wrong. It's instantaneous. So there's not even a delay. You think the star is 1 billion years away, so you're seeing light from 1 billion years ago hitting you or whatever. He said that's not the case whatsoever. It's instantaneous. Alex, would you care to comment?
Hi, thanks for the question, Randy. There's a couple points I'd like to make to tie a couple of loose ends together. And one is that, so the speed of light is a physical manifestation. Light is a manifestation of physicality. So therefore the speed of light is a physical manifestation. And I hope to go into more detail on that in the next couple of weeks. But the point being is that one of the limitations that we had in the physical science is this fundamental fallacy. And where is that problem? And so that problem comes this way. We know that we are bound to the earth and that the ground is down and the ceiling is up in the earth space. But once we go beyond the magnetosphere, and we've been calling that space, but there's a kind of space, and that is the inner space. And the reason it's the inner space is because, again, we can see it. So the difference between the earth space and the inner space is not in its physicality. The difference is in its plasmatic positioning between the mag-rav position of the earth and the mag-rav position of the inertia. Because the inertia is still present, the Earth's field is still present, but we have come to the point where we have a difference between mass and weight. So the mass is a representation of the physical manifestation, and the weight is a representation of the physical manifestation in the context of the earth space. So let's say this again. The mass is a physical expression of the inner space, and the mass is a physical expression of the earth space. The weight of the physicality is specific to the earth space. The weight is not existent in the inner space, and that's why it's weightless. So how do we achieve this anomaly where we say that the light travels at so many light years? Well, the light years are a physical representation of that expression, but they are not a plasmatic expression. Outer space is a plasmatic expression. And you know that it exists because, first of all, there's a hole in the GANs. And second of all, there's a soul in the hole. There's a soul in the hole in the GANs. So you know that it exists even though it's not visible. And you say, okay, well, so it's vanished. Whatever was there was vanished. But it is visible. So you know that it came from somewhere. And so the knowing that it came from somewhere is the transparency. And so this is the purpose of today's class, is to say that the rate of change is determined by the limitations of your observation. And if you're seeing the observation from the point of physicality, you are traveling at the slowest speed. So it's going to take you light years to achieve anything. But if you're traveling in the plasma state, then virtually it's instantaneous. And it's simultaneous because there's a giving and taking of energy. So regardless, if it's a giving and taking of energy on the physical plane, or it's a giving or taking of energy on the plasma plane, the GANs has demonstrated that there's a giving and taking of energy between the two planes, right? because the GANs can give and take. The GANs is a natural lie detector. The GANs is a natural love detector. So if you want to carry on lying, cheating, and stealing, forget about the plasma science. You can't make that transition. And that's the point. The second point is that when you look at the GANs in the cup of life, it wasn't there. You created it. But where did the GANs come from? There's no lid on top, right? You didn't step on the tube to squeeze the stuff out. The stuff came in. And where did it come from? And so the analogy could be rain. You say, oh, where did the rain come from? Oh, well, the rain came from the sky. Where exactly in the sky did the rain come from? And if you're standing in one spot, you could be standing in the rain, or you could be standing not in the rain. But it's interesting that if you're driving a car at a very high speed, you may go through a rainstorm. And what's really funny is when that rainstorm is very, very isolated, you may come from a point of sunshine into the rainstorm and come out the other side. And so you would be able to see no rain, rain, and then no rain again. And all that rain came from the sky. But where in the sky did it come from? And then if the rain where you didn't have rain didn't come from the sky, what would you say? Well, there's no rain. It didn't come from the sky. So do you go around saying, well, it's no rain? Or do you say, well, it's a sunny day? And then if it's raining, do you say, oh, it's a not sunny day? Or do you say it's a rainy day? So it's your point of view, isn't it? And the point that I'm trying to make is whether it's raining or it's not raining, energy is coming from the sky. Something is coming from the sky. And you know that because you made GANs in the cup of life. And so what we're trying to demonstrate with the cup of life is this energy in motion. How something that was invisible is suddenly visible, or something that disappeared suddenly manifest. And it's not magic when you understand the plasma science. So if you can understand the plasma science, then understand this. The reason I repeat this each and every time is because the cups of life are not the cups of pandemic. They're the cups of life. And so we have a connection to this life. And we have an energy level that is different from other energy levels. The creation is the same, but the mass is different. Okay? The energy level is different. And so there is a connection. And that connection is the carbon connection. And for some reason, we are not seeing this connection. And so what I'm trying to do is to clearly point out the difference between what you can't see and what you can see through, because both are non-visible. And if you can see that, then you can understand the pathway to the physicality. And why this is important is because of the mathematical sum. The mathematical sum derived from order of magnitude. 1 order of magnitude, 2 orders of magnitude, 3 orders of magnitude. It's 10 to the power of 2, 10 to the power of 3, 10 to the power of 4. So 10 times 10 is 100, times 10 is 1,000, times 10 is 10,000. So just to go up 1 order of magnitude is 10 times more of the previous, right? And so why do we continually seek the weakest form of energy? Because there's a delay in consequences. It gives us an opportunity to confirm our existence and say, well, this is where I am, and that is 8 light years away. So you say, oh, well, I have 8 light years to waste my time. And yet, interestingly enough, there are objects on this planet, such as the pyramids, or such as Stonehenge, just for example, and they indicate periods of time 2,160 years apart. And maybe you have a watch, and on that watch, you see minutes, seconds, hours. And in your lifetime, generally accepted lifetime, say between 60 and 120 years. Who of you who has a lifetime expectancy of 60 to 120 years would have a watch that keeps track of 2,160 year intervals? So therefore, that time that we are working on is a physical time. There is another field strength, and we need to recognize that. And failing to recognize that is limiting and slowing down the rate of change. So I brought in 3 or 4 thoughts in that answer. Thank you very much.
I think Ed has his hand up. He may want to add something.
Randy, was your question basically concerning the relationship between the speed and the time?
Alex explained it beautifully, and you know, it did have something to do with speed and time, yes, but when we understand the difference between the matter state and the plasma state, I think that whole statement was in the matter state, not the plasma state, because we know the plasma state operates differently.
Okay. If you're satisfied then with Alex's answer, I don't think I have anything to add.
Well, I'm absolutely satisfied. He did an excellent job. Open my brain cells up even more. Thank you.
I was thinking about the soul, and Mr. Kesh said, if I put you in the Universal Body Enhancement Spaceship unit and we elevate your soul, the problems in the physicality seem to disappear. Oh, there's the kitty. Now, for feeding, if we elevate the soul of the man and it's able to take in more energy, the soul is able to feed the physicality. And I'm wondering why that isn't happening now. When we depart from this planet and all the souls in the body give up their energy back to the soul, then the soul, I guess, can leave with that energy. And we've heard it referred to as like 18 times the energy released in Hiroshima. So I was thinking, isn't the soul mature enough? Haven't some of the souls here come from other places and manifested in the physicality? And is that what happens when you manifest in the physicality? The soul loses some of its energy and then takes it back at the point of when a new cycle is ready to start? It just seems odd. Is the soul too weak to do it on its own? Why does it need this elevation? We know Mr. Kesha said it has a double PhD in this knowledge. It can see behind you, on the side of you. It gives you warnings. It's like a scout. It's your closest friend. What is happening there? Is the soul not mature enough? Or why would we have to add energy to the soul to make some of these other situations?
Can I answer you?
Of course.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jalal.
Hi, guys. Sorry, I was dropping so many times today.
I was wondering about that. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Thank you for coming back in.
Okay. Let's put you as a knowledge seekers, and let's put the other humans. Is there a difference between you and them? I don't think so.
I think all
But-
souls are equal. Yeah.
Okay. But you have a connection line for a knowledge, and this knowledge called plasma technology. So this link to this knowledge only, it give you, let's say, a higher position to be the last man for some position. As example, if the human who made the whiteboard, okay.
Alex.
Okay. Wait a minute.
The Easter Bunny.
Yeah, I know. I know. Let me put this on. Okay. Here, the knowledge of the universe. Two separate parts, a knowledge seeker, a normal human, both equal. Knowledge seeker have a line of connection to this knowledge. A human being have a different connection to a different knowledges. Maybe one of these in some part connect to this one, maybe. But it's all connected to the universe knowledge. Now, how much you increase the level of connection, in different colors, how much you tap into the center of this knowledge. In all its colors. Maybe this guy here is also tapping to the universal knowledge, but maybe he's tapping only to the surface of it, the matter state of it. So how much you go in to the knowledge of the universe. And in reality, he give us the whole knowledge. In all aspects. The matter state of it, the energy of it, the health of it, everything. Transportation, because it is give, take, push, pull.
But don't forget, Jalal, the soul already has a double PhD in this knowledge. It doesn't need any of the physicality to survive on its own.
No, it is this one, the guy here.
Yeah, we're talking about the soul itself,
Yeah, the soul. What is the soul?
not so much the physicality.
What is the soul? What is the orange? What's the have to do with the orange? Again, the box and the orange. What you done? What you done? You put CO2, a connection. You put CuO, physicality. You put CH3, energy. You put amino acid. Mr. Cohen, alive. All of them interacting here. What they do? They do a magnet. You do a magnet. A magnet which is bring this sort of energy due to the strength. A red magnet bring a red strength. If you make with it a green magnet strength, it will bring also the green magnet in. If you make the matter state magnet, it will bring the matter state strength. It's a magnet. Once you create it, it's already in the water. So what is the soul? You call it the soul. Is it the energy which is here, the magnet, which is once it's created, finished? It will never be destroyed. It will be never destroyed.
But would you consider the wish or the intention a magnet as well?
Everything is energy level. Whatever you call it, you have the matter state you do with your hands, you have the transition you do with your emotion, and you have the soul. The principle you call it the soul. Every one of them, it have its own magnet, and you can connect to everything due to the strength. Now, how much you learn from this knowledge? A question you need to ask yourself: how much you learn from this knowledge to go deeper in the knowledge? He said a knowledge seeker, he can live for 2,000 years. Are you kidding me? No way. Yes, no way, you are here. Yes, there is a way you are here. What to prevent you from doing what he's saying? What to prevent you from doing? The knowledge is there. All of you here, the knowledge seekers, and even the knowledge seekers which is not here, in all these communities, what to prevent you from doing whatever you want from this knowledge? You are not doing anything. There is a bank called the universe. You need to make a work to get support. That's all. You call it a wish. Okay. I wish to have something. Okay, this one will give you, but what is your work? What is the work that
Maybe-
this one is supporting?
Maybe we're going to look at the matter state slightly different in the coming weeks and months and years.
What is the work? There is a work in the matter state, there is a work in the emotion, and there is a work in the soul. What is the work? If your wish fulfill the work of this law, they will give, like a bank, you know. If you go to the bank now, you or me, if I go to the bank and I say I want $1 million, let's say, or 1 million euro, the bank will never reject you, but he will ask you, why you want this million? What is the work to do that when we give this million, it will go in the right way and it will give back the benefit. I cannot give you 1 million just like this.
I thought it was already mine.
You have, you know what? You have your own bank and this is your soul, okay? But even your soul is connected to this bank, to the universe. And they have to feed you, they have to protect you, you know, your soul. It have to do all of this sort of things. But if you ask for 1 million, it have, let's say, 10,000. But it can ask the real bank for 1 million if you provide something, insurance, that this work, it will give back the benefit of this million. So everyone will jump in and support you. But what is the work? I will give you something, guys. I hope you understand it. And this is, I discussed it in the past days with some knowledge seekers. Look, Mr. Cass said in one of his teaching, we provide energy to this area. We know this, let's say, 2000 kilowatts. We know from 12 o'clock in the night until 6 o'clock, the consumption is not more than, let's say, 15, 14, 13. But in one point, from 6 o'clock until 8 o'clock, you know, when you make the scale of the energy, from 12 to 6, it's like this. But from 6 to 8, it goes like this. You had a peak. There is more consumption because all here make breakfast or something, and it continue like this and go back to 2000. But if we have, let's say, a football match, and it's very important, we see in between the two what do you call it?
Goals.
Yeah. It goes here, let's say it goes to 3,000 because a lot is watching the TV, the match. Here it goes high up in this 15 minutes or 20 minutes. It goes double it goes to 6,000, 7,000. Why? Because in this 15 minutes, all of them, some goes to the toilet, but the others goes and make coffee and tea. In this moment of time. So what they do, the control and the generators, they open a gates of they open more gates in the dams to give more power to call to more power to generate only this peak, this 15 minutes of energy, and it goes about double of what they are consuming. But what he say, this is a big problem in this control, because it's a huge consumption for 15, 20 minutes of time. But after that, it will drop again, and for 3,000 and 2,000 and 1,000 and like this, and they start again the next day. But he said this extra energy, which is double amount of normal, they do not know from where it came. They didn't ask for the gates to open or the generator to provide more. He said one in Sansano who have a maggraph, which has happened in that time. He started logged in. I hope you understand this very well. I hope. We look, there is a bank, there is a universe we have to take from. This is wrong. This will never give you unless you make similar, smaller plasma. This smaller plasma is connected to the bigger plasma. You make the condition. In your cup, you made the condition, my dear friends. You didn't do anything. You made the condition for this energy, you call it orange, to be here. It could be red. It could be green. It could be black. Whatever kind of color you want, and shape and form. You have to have the condition. You have to create a condition. The egg and sperm, they made a condition. They made a condition. They made a magnet, a red magnet, with all his plan, with all everything for bringing amino acid as your folks. What you done? You made a condition. Fields to get amino acid. You call it a sol. A higher than the ganses, a higher than the nano, a higher than the metaset. You call it a sol. In respect to this one, in respect to this cup, amino acid, it's a sol in respect to what you have here. It's the same thing. You have a ganses, a sperm, and the egg. They have a sol. They interact. They create a position, maggraph position, to bring a sol. You cannot bring this red one unless you make a condition. So in energy, you have to make a condition. Transition, you have to make a condition. it pull you in, or you go magnetic, because you make a wake-up condition for a bigger plasma. So it will pull you. The understanding of the plasma is very, very simple. You have to know where you are. I am working in the matter state of the plasma, of the transition of the plasma, or in the principle of the plasma, where you are and how you will interact. Three position, three position, three position. Thank you very much.
That was brilliant, Jalal. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, Marie has put into the chat TV Galactica, which is every Tuesday, a public platform, and she shares that with Raphael. And I can't think of Rosanna, I believe her name is. And
Yes.
that's
Hi.
that. Hi, go ahead, Marie, please.
Yeah, I had a request from someone who was asking, who couldn't find the TV Galactica sessions that Rafael and me do with Rosanna. So this is the latest from last week, but we've done a lot of them. So if you're interested, they are all in this TV Galactica channel. Thank you.
Yes, it's a very beautiful program where they, Universal Council members, and I think Mr. Kesh once in a while answers questions that are put to Marie and Raphael. So it's a very beautiful short program, maybe about 45, 55 minutes sometimes. But you can find it on YouTube and link up there, or just copy this link right here in the chat.
Yes, so there will be a new TV Galactica with us on Tuesday, first in a couple of days.
Thank you.
And I will share the link to this in all the language groups and on YouTube. I think I used to do. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. I was wondering, Dan, if you have a microphone, why you put 11 video in there? Is that something you were referring to for Salamia, perhaps? I don't know if you can speak right now. You may not be able to.
I was thinking it was the 11th kids workshop.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. I didn't listen to everything, but it was when they were discussing this radiation thing. So there's a lot of knowledge everywhere. So the kids' workshops are really good if you want to catch up with the plasma technology.
Yes, it's a very gentle way Mr. Kesh introduces it, and he says a lot of times the adults get more from it than the kids do, in a way, because it's sort of disarming. He's not really going into a strong, with a lot of words, but just makes it a simple understanding. As Jalal said, the knowledge is simple, but because of its simplicity, we confuse it and think it's hard to understand it, but it's the simplicity of it that's got us confused. It's much simpler than we think it is. And so the mind comes in and starts to take over. It
Ask the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that your soul? Isn't that your bank? You make the connection.
Yes, your closest friend is your soul.
So make the connection. Call. Yeah,
If it was that
really,
easy, he wouldn't be providing all these systems for us to link
it is
together, even though some people can do it. There's no question about it.
all of us,
Yes.
all of us, we are already connected, but we do not know where is the door. We have to search for the door. Why he give you? You remember what he give you the first? This is your head. This is your ear. He give you the headphone, which is adjustable headphone. Why? Why? To make the connection, emotion with the soul of the emotion. Go beyond the physicality of the frequency of the ears to just be aware where is your soul. Aware. I know it's there, but I do not connect to it. If I do not move it here and there, and you know, if the picture, if you have a shadow, you have a shadow of one part. But in the plasma, you have two shadows. In the plasma, you have two shadows of one. And this is this is what Mr. Cash explained, and he showed us in the private teaching. You have a shadow of two. One a matter state and one plasma state. But this one you do not see. It's the same thing. Here you have the position of the matter state. You can see it by the MRI. But there is the position of the plasma state, which is you feel it. You have to feel it. The best way you can feel it is by speakers. If you can feel it with another device, which is inside you, the hands, the eyes, the nose, the whatever, if you trigger the position of the soul, that means you made the connection. If I am aware that you are exist, that means I confirm your existence. So I make a connection. You understand? Confirming. Confirm it more. Give it the guide. Give it the steering. We do not give the soul a steering. We give the emotion and physicality. That's why he said the first second of everything is connected to the soul. Everything you do, the first second, even when you think, the first the first second of thinking, it is connected to the soul. After 2 seconds, 3 seconds, it's connected to the emotion and the brain. And this is what you do not want because it's connected to the physicality. And this is what he's teaching also Silvania and Andreas. And they told us. They sit together and he tell them, do not speak. Do not think. Just stay there. And he come in 1 second, he said, what this guy think? Don't think, just say what he's thinking. Why? He knows in the beginning this is have nothing to do with this, but they are connected. So he trying to trigger this 1 second of before thinking. He's trying to trigger it. Do not speak. What he is trying to do. He wants to trigger beyond the voice, folks. Triggering. Are we not connected to the soul? Yes, we are connected. But we refer the emotion and the physicality to do the job, not the soul. Because once we trigger the soul, my dear friends, oh my dear, we have to accept the law of the soul. And any one of us accept the law of the soul. We speak about giving. We speak about sacrificing even to our children. We sacrifice our life. But do we sacrifice our life to the other? Do we give to the other? Do we care about the other? Do we love the other as we love our children, as we love our mothers and fathers and brothers? How much it's you? How much you go deeper and you love more? You are connected to more souls. You are connected to your soul, because this is the currency of the soul. The soul do not, like the body of the man. The body of the man, with all these energies, he knows one thing. He knows the energy of the calcium. Everything is coming through the filter of energy of calcium. So the soul, it have one thing. The filter of the soul, everything coming through the love, and everything goes through the love. The same filter, gravitational and magnetical. So if you ask through the love for the others, they will receive and you receive more. If you ask for the others through the love, they will receive from the soul, from your soul. They will receive. They will receive, and their soul will give you more. Give you through your filter. What is your filter? It's love. The filter of the soul is love. Giving
which
of
is
love.
giving. Yes.
It's giving, even if you take, you are giving. But what you take through the love. I love to take the pain of this person. Why? Because you love to take from him. You are not stealing. You are taking. For him, it's a bad energy. He call it a disease. But for you, it is love energy, because your filter is love. So this you call bad energy. It will come through your filter. It will divert to a love filter. You remember what Alex he showed? One magnet flip. It will flip all the magnets. You need to flip, that's all. Flip from the physicality to the soul. And
Yeah.
I don't think any one of you, really, any one of you, is shortage of knowledge. But he do not categorize what he is listening, what Mr. Cash saying. Any level, you understand? Any level, even if the matter state, it have 3 levels inside it. Matter, emotion, soul. If you understand it, it's similar with the emotion, a similar with the soul, a similar with the higher than the soul. It's no different, but in different strengths. That's all. I hope I understand what I'm teaching.
You're hoping you get it right. Me too. And often Mr. Kesh has said it's all of our obligations individually to investigate and understand this knowledge for ourselves, no one else.
Of
And,
course, because
in
you are
in the last workshop, he said the MECD is within yourself. No one else can teach you. Isn't that an interesting saying for that? Because he is encouraged. He says we're all students and we're all teachers in a way, but I wrote that statement down that the MECD is within yourself and
you
no
are
one
the
else.
last. You
can
are
teach
the
you.
last man standing
Yes,
for
no
yourself.
question. You're your own savior, correct?
For yourself, you are the last man standing. So no one is there to save you.
Catch
It's only
me.
you. It's only you. Yes, he's saving you by giving you the knowledge,
Yeah.
giving you that what you already have. He's not making something new. You already have a physicality. You already have emotion. and you are already have a soul and connection to the higher soul.
But I think going into these systems is going to create something very special in each person. As he said, we've talked to some of the knowledge seekers who have been
If you,
processed.
no, don't forget one thing. He said, if you go to this device, if you need, this device will give. But if you don't need,
You won't feel anything.
thank you. It's a need only. Make the need.
There was a question from Mark about isn't the soul strong enough? Something like that you asked earlier.
Yes,
Mark.
about all the problems in the physicality. I
Yeah,
know they're created
how-
by the emotions and so on, but why isn't the soul able to pull itself up? Some people
Yes.
have. Some
Yeah.
people have. And why isn't the soul able to, even though it's doing you're absorbing 80% of the energies you need automatically, in a way, all of us are. It's only the 20% we're short. Why isn't the soul strong enough? I know he said when
Yes.
you go into that-
Who said the soul is not strong enough? My
I'm
dear,
going to teach here from Yalal's teaching.
the soul is, you know what? You know,
What is it on strike?
the physicality is 5% from the actual energy of you as Mark or Jalal or Marie. All this physicality, what you see, it's 5% of energy. 95% of the energy is a soul level. But you do not, you do not enter the zone of the soul. You ask the emotion connected to the soul, emotion connected to physicality, and it takes from the environment, stealing from the environment to the physicality. You are never asked the soul. You never ask the soul.
Okay.
You know why? We said, stop talking. What that mean? You stop this guy. That means you are calling this guy. When you stop talking, when you talk, you are working with this device, physicality and emotion. When you stop talking, that means I dropped the physicality and the emotion. I started to trigger the soul.
Or finding out about the emotions of the soul of the man.
Whatever you call it, whatever.
No, that's true. The soul
it's
itself
okay.
has emotions. That's fine.
No, it's okay. Whatever you say, but try to drop the physical work of it. That's all. Whatever name you put, if you like, put any name. If this help you to trigger this name, what you call, it's okay. You call it emotion, you call it motion of emotion, whatever name you put. But stop the physicality. You have eye and physicality. You have ear and physicality. You have nose and physicality. You have feeling in physicality, hands, and you have voice box in physicality. Try to stop them. Try to go beyond them. Which is beyond them is the emotion. Every device have emotion beyond it. And this emotion is connected to the soul. It's near to the soul. It's nearer than the matter state.
Even the soul has an ear, doesn't it?
Of course, of course.
Could we go? I don't know if Marie wanted to share something. Ed has his hand up, and then Gail. I think she wanted to share one of your teachings, Jalal.
Yeah, I want to share one of what I've learned from Jalal in his teaching.
Wow. Okay, go ahead.
It's about the strength of our soul. So in Yalal's teaching, I learned that like when we are created or when we come here to this earth, we are, if we have like 1,000, that's just an example, 1,000 of energy. When we are eating, every time we're eating an egg or a plant or whatever, we have to pay. So we are eating the physicality, but we have to pay back. We get the energy from physicality, but we have to pay back to the soul.
The
So we-
fields have to balance.
Yeah, so we have to give soul energy, which is very strong, every time we eat. And that's why this cup of orange is very important, because you don't have to eat the orange. You can only get the energy into that water. Because when you eat the orange, you eat it because you need the energy to exist in physicality. But with this cup, we kind of get this energy without killing the orange, because the
Stealing.
orange is also something living. So when we eat it, we kind of interrupt the purpose of this orange, which is probably to become an orange tree somewhere, because it has seeds and everything. So by using this cup, we can stop depleting our soul. And when we do that, because we are stealing from our own soul, and we also do that with our behavior. But now we know. So with this knowing that we learned from Mr. Kesh and all these other teachers like Yalal and Alex and so on, now we know, so we can stop stealing from our own soul. And then we will both add energy to our soul, but we will also stop taking out energy. So then our soul will be stronger. So that was my word from, and thank you, Yalal, for sharing your knowledge.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Ed and then Gail and then Randy.
So Mark, I asked Mr. Kesh a question once. It was not the same as your question, but he made it very clear to me. I was asking about the positioning of the soul of the man and the soul of the physicality, and how I had come to see it. But within his answer, he made something that was quite a revelation to me, and that is that the soul of the man and the soul of physicality, yes, we separate them in our understanding, but they are together. They totally interact. They totally the energy of one goes within the energy of the other. In a way, they're not separate. It's all one entity. And that's why the soul cannot take over, so to speak. It requires both. It requires the interaction of both of them. In a way, the soul of the physicality needs to...
Can I jump 1 second here?
I know what you're going to say, Jalal, but go ahead.
Can I say one thing? Ed,
Yes, sure.
look, and all of you, please understand what I'm going to draw here. We said every level, it have 3 levels. This is the matter state. This is the emotion transition, it have 3. And this is the soul, have 3. Okay, now you speak about soul of physicality. This is one. Soul of the man. This is two. What is the three? It have to be three. They are not, nothing work without three. Nothing. Nothing. Plasma interact with the plasma. They create a third. It have to be. It has to be.
Soul of the
What is the third?
universe.
Sorry,
The three is the interaction of the two.
what is it?
Soul
It
of
have
the
to be a
universe.
position.
It's well, if you had to give it a position, it's not really a position because they interact with one another. But if you had to draw it, it would be
Is
between the
it
two.
exist? Is it exist? What do you think? Exist or not?
What, the third?
Yes.
Well, I'm trying to answer it from your perspective. I'm not sure I can because I don't quite see it that way. But
Okay.
just
Okay.
like,
Wait.
just like it's okay, the skin has three
Let him
layers.
answer.
Wait.
There's a-
Wait.
Jalal,
Wait.
could
Wait.
he-
You
Okay.
have a cup and you have orange. The whole cup is a plasma and the orange is a plasma. The interaction of the two created an orange in the water. So it exists. It
It was
have a
the
position.
interaction of the two, yes.
Oh, yes. So it exists. The same thing. Your physicality and the emotion created the soul. Now the soul, when it exists, it takes control. Interaction of the three created F1. This is what we learn from the plasma.
So it's a free soul. Free soul.
Okay, what is it?
In between the reaction is in between the two. The soul
What
of
is it?
physical in between the two.
Not
It's the
necessarily.
So-
thalamus.
I think what Jalal is trying to say is that the soul of the man created the soul of the physicality, which is correct. But once it was created,
Yeah.
they became all one.
Wait.
Just
wait.
like the orange in the water.
No way. In from the understanding of Mr. Cash, you said you have a soul of physicality, yes, and you have a soul of the man.
And you have the physicality.
No, a soul. What is the soul? A soul, level of a soul, my dear. Every interaction is a three. I said a matter state. It have a three. You know what? It's like this. It's around. It's like this. A matter state, transition, and a soul. Another color. Transition, matter state in this level, and the soul. And another color. It's like this. Soul, transition in the level, and matter in the level. It's like this. So always you have a three. A matter state. What is the black one? A matter state. It have a level of the soul. Emotion have a level of a soul. And the soul, it have a level of a soul.
Free plasma. Okay.
Three plasmas, always. The matter state, it have a matter. The emotion have a matter state. The soul have a matter state. The transition, the same thing. The transition have transition. The transition in the matter state. The transition in the soul level. So you said soul of physicality, soul of the man. What is the third one? You will not answer me. I know.
Free plasma.
The soul of the transition. Could that be emotion?
You will not answer me because It wasn't in your mind to investigate and learn about it. That's all. It's not about. It's not that it's not in your knowledge, deep in your knowledge, but you need to research.
What
I
about
need Mr. Cash.
the principal matter creating the transitional matter and then moving into the matter and then can go vice versa? From the
Whatever
matter through the transitional back to the
whatever matter
principle.
to your matter.
That's what I understood from one of the books I was reading.
It's okay.
So
It's okay.
in relation to
I
your
know.
question, Mark, though, however we wish to perceive it, whether Jalal's explanation or whatever, the thing to understand is that they cannot act independently. They are part of one another. And so the soul cannot just willy-nilly decide to elevate itself. It's because now it is part of the soul of physicality. And if there's a third layer, whatever that is, it's all part of one. They have to interact now. They have to give and take with one another. They have to agree with one another. They have to accommodate for one another. And that's why, for me, the simplicity of it is the soul of physicality has to learn to give to the soul and to relate on its level. And then the soul can elevate the whole package. We can become higher because the soul of physicality is often lacking our understanding and stuff like that. But as it comes more and more in line, the whole kit and caboodle becomes elevated, and it becomes closer to, if you want to talk about eating, I think probably that's where we come closer and closer to not having to use the physicality to kill something to eat. We will come to that place, but it's not just, the soul cannot just take over, because now it's a totality.
Is the third the light?
We were going to go to Randy, has had his hand up for a while.
And don't forget me.
And then
Just-
Gail, and then
Just one second. Just 1 second.
Diane.
Just 1 second.
Oh, sure.
Let me tell you the creation. A soul create a physicality, then
It gets
Feeding.
trapped in it.
feeding the physicality, interact with it, create the transition.
Free plasma.
Do you want to draw that from the fields to the plasma, to the physics, to the biology, to the chemistry, and then to the biology, and then to the soul?
This is the way it goes. But now we are speaking, let's say, about a soul. A soul create physicality. Once it creates a physicality, it have to create. This is transition. This is the energy which is transit from the soul to the physicality. So they interact. Once they interact, they create what we call motion. Once it's created, finished. It have a position. It's intelligent. So it have a say in this plasma. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing. And I like what Ed said. Soul of physicality, the highest. Soul of the man, the highest of the totality, yes? What is the third one? It have to be third. Without the third, there is no existence. And it have to be in the same level. We are speaking about soul.
But Jalal, is that not the free plasma?
What is it?
FREE, it's created between the two.
Okay, I am not saying you are wrong, but I'm
Okay.
asking, where is it?
Thalamus.
Search.
Is it present?
I'm telling you it exists, but I will not tell you where is it.
No problem.
And
Can we go to Randy
if you
next?
find it-
He's been waiting.
Mark, if you find it, let's say it's here. If you find it, this is only one plasma. Even it is in this soul level. Where is the twin?
Oh,
You will
yes.
not get rid of me. Never.
It's above the head.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's
It's
whatever
not-
you say.
We're
No,
going to
it's
go to
like-
Randy next, please. Can everybody just allow the others to share as well?
Yes. Let's hear Randy.
Randy's
Long
had his
time no
hand up
hear.
for a while, and then Gail, and then Lisbeth.
Thank you, Mark.
Between is a connection and the emotion is a connection, no?
Hmm. Let's hold that thought for a moment, Lisbeth, and then let's hear from Randy if we could. He's been waiting to come in and share.
Me too.
And
I'd
then
like to
Gail, then
share.
Lisbeth. Yes, no problem.
I'd like to share my experiment this week I did with amino acids. I
Sure.
took the amino acids of cup 1, and I took the amino acids of cup 2, and I mixed them together and put them in a plastic vial, and I put them in my pockets in the morning. When it came time to eat supper, I didn't want to eat.
Good.
There was a bowl of soup there. All I could manage was 4 or 5 spoonfuls. I didn't want to eat any more food. So the importance of us creating our cups and the amino acids that are in those cups, I think are far more powerful than we can ever imagine.
So there was no struggle or no fighting.
No struggle, no fighting. Well, no, it was a fight to eat the food.
Oh.
Even though the body's trained, yeah, it's supper time, I have to eat. But the soul didn't want any physical food. It just wanted the energy. So I think this is a great teaching that Mr. Kesh has been kind of telling us, but we haven't been getting it.
Yes.
So I thought, why not take the
Yes.
amino acids, put them there, put them in my pockets, and see what happens. I had those in my pockets for 4 or 5 days.
What did the
I
cook
feel-
say about that?
Well, the cook wasn't too happy on that present, so we just had to modify things. Okay.
Randy,
Then-
testimony.
Yes,
did
Compromise.
you mix them?
yes, I mixed them together.
Mix them together. Okay.
Mixed them together. It took a long time. These amino acids were in some cups I've had going for months and months and months and months, and just keep refilling and refilling and refilling.
And no CH3 in there?
No,
You
no,
said
see, I haven't
CO2 and CuO.
cup 1 and cup 2.
Yeah,
They're probably-
that's, yeah.
I have a comment on that. I did a similar experiment. I took, after seeing Mr. Kesh talking about the amino acid that is on our skin, and also, of course, in the class of Jalal. So I took, I had a lot of cloths that is like a roll of, you only use them once, or it's like throwaway cloths. You know what I mean?
Wiping,
So I-
yes, small wiping cloths,
Yeah. And I took
sanitary.
one and I wet it and I washed my forehead and a little of my hair, and like an experiment.
Mhm.
Put it in a plastic bag, like a Ziploc bag. Put it under my clothes, and I had it even on my body when I went to sleep. And I wake up at 4 in the morning, and I was so energized. So I just say everyone should try that tonight.
Very
Okay.
nice. Very nice.
Mark, I just have a very, very, very simple question.
Sure.
We're talking about putting earphones on and then locating the soul in the first second. Does it have to be, is there a problem if it's Bluetooth or if it's connected physically to a USB? Like what do we, is there any restriction on what kind of earphones? I mean, is that what you call them? You know, the ones that you put over your ears. For those who might have done it in the past. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That one looks like it might have some sort of a connection there. How beautiful they are. Shame. So nobody has any preference. It doesn't really matter as long as you listen in and try to catch the first connection.
Well, the one on the picture looks like it's Bluetooth. It's not wire. It's wireless. Is that what you're
Well,
asking?
there's something coming out of on the right hand side. If you look down, it looks like Alex probably chopped off something there. I don't know.
I think
Sorry,
I
I
have
have
a
to take a call. Gail, I just have to take this
Yeah.
call. Thank
I
you.
have a comment to Gail. I think the most important thing is that you are looking for your soul, because your
So
soul will respond on that. You looking for your soul. So,
Okay.
okay, you put on the headphones and
Listen in quick.
yeah, and you're really looking for your soul. And it will probably respond on that.
I've
And
been
how
listening
many-
to my soul for a long time. You know, when you have to heal yourself, you end up kind of going to that area. But yeah, okay.
And how many people today are listening to this teaching with headphones?
I wish I did.
I do all the time. Only way my Zoom works is with headphones.
Oh, what kind of headphones do you use, Randy?
I've got a set of wireless headphones.
Okay, so have you been able to connect to your soul?
Oh, absolutely. There's
Okay.
different times when if I just want silence and the computers and stuff aren't on, I'll just put the headphones on and that'll block out all the other noises from the environment. It'll help. And then after a while, you don't need that.
Okay. And are there any particular brand that you use?
Oh, something I bought from Amazon because they were cheap, but they have been a very good pair.
I
Well,
can
thank
sell
you.
someone. I have here a lot.
Have what?
Now the time to sell. I have. You want?
Oh, you want to send them? You can send them with your
He
soul.
said sell them,
Oh,
but he could send them too.
Let's make a business, Randy.
Okay. You supply the
Very
coffee, I'll
nice.
supply the headphones.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
Thank you, Jalal, and thank you, Randy and Marie, for beautiful sharing there about, and that's one of our problems. Mr. Kesh said we have two problems: lack of knowledge and lack of time spent in the lab. So both Randy and Marie have found something just by a small experiment.
Yeah.
And that's very encouraging. Is Lisbeth still here or she quit us? I hope you're still here, Lisbeth. Would you like to come in and share something?
About the question?
Yes, whatever you wanted to share.
Now, I'm sorry. And now I changed my home, but
Okay.
sorry, I don't have now here. But maybe find different videos and share and explain. So by now, because I changed back at my home again, and I don't have anything here. But I find the videos and explain. And
Very
thank you.
nice.
And thank you so much, because always there is learning more.
Always. Yes, the knowledge never ends. As we heard Mr. Kesh say, there's thousands of steps in this ladder, and oops, it's getting feedback.
Yeah, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you
Okay.
for sharing.
Let me ask one question. Randy and Marie, you are doing very well, but don't forget, don't ever forget, you are working still with the matter self. You need to create a condition to create this field of amino acid. You need to create a condition to create the field of the amino acid which you want.
I have a question. So that is my next experiment with this amino acid on my skin. So I have to use my emotion. So I want to be happy like I'm now. And then I will take that amino acid from my skin.
Okay.
So that is what you mean, huh?
You give, look, you give what you do not need. I say it again. You always give what you do not need. If you breathe, you give out what you do not need. If you drink, you give out what you do not need. If you eat, you give out what you do not need. The same thing with the field of your aura. Now, without knowing your aura, this is what you do not need. Now, what you said, very beautiful saying. Now, what you do, you wash your physicality, and now think in love. Give love. Give love. What you will create now, even the soul, emotion, and physicality, you will have an aura which is in this level. Love. Giving love. Think you do not need anything from anyone. You are taking from your soul and giving to everyone. So you will increase this level of your aura. That means you will attract the same level. You will attract. It's a magnet. You are a magnet. You will attract the same level. Now you take this amino acid. It's in, yes, in the matter state, of course. But it's a higher level of matter state. It is in level of love. And see what is the difference. It's very beautiful what you are saying, Marie. And Randy, that is really very beautiful what you are saying. But try always to go above. You know, the circle, it have to be opened. The circle, it have to be open. Why? Because from this opening, you can go to another level. Also, it is opened that you can go to another level. It have to be open. If you close the circle, you stay in the same level. That's why your magraph, it's not closed. It have to be a point of start, a point of end. But
Thank you, Yama.
beautiful what you are saying, guys. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. And Marie and Randy and Lisbeth and Gail. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share? I know we were.
I want to
Y-
talk
yes.
to Mr. Cash. I have a question.
Okay, well, just contact his soul. He said his soul is always available. You can't take all of it, but you can share part of it.
2 weeks, I am getting crazy. I need to talk to him.
Well, connect on the soul level. Mhm. Anyone else? I don't see Mr. Kesh here unless he's here under another name, but he may be listening in the background, or with all the activities and things going on between the countries and this and that, I'm sure everybody wants Mr. Kesh. That's what he says.
Yeah, he needs to hear something.
Okay, well, you can contact him in the Zoom, I think, platform if you're a student, or you can write to the Kesh Foundation. Anyone else
Okay,
want to?
I will wait.
Thank you, Selena.
Thank you. Mhm.
Were you with Mr. Kesh in Italy, or it sounded like your voice, but it might have been someone else's? Did you ever travel over to be with Mr. Kesh in some of these earlier teachings years ago? I know you said you've been around for quite some time, I thought.
No, no, no.
No,
No.
okay. Alex?
Yes, Mark, thank you. What a breathtaking meeting we've had.
You've been rather quiet in the last
Well.
15 or 20 minutes. I didn't want to ignore you at all.
No, it's absolutely an honor.
I thought
to
it was a
listen.
great interaction.
Oh,
Yes.
fantastic, fantastic. And I want to thank everybody who did. And the one comment that I want to make is I'm so impressed with the quality. It's high quality. And I thank you all very, very much, because it helps us to move to the next level. So, and I want to also thank you for being here and allowing me to continue to present. And reward for me is to see this kind of high quality interaction. So I'm going to sign off here and let the others continue in this absolute wonderful journey.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jalal, you have your mic open?
Sorry, I noticed. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Yes, thank all of us, as we're all getting into this one soul dimension, or this one mekti, apparently. And we need to get the units out. Contact your governments, universities. You never know. You can plant a seed, and sometimes that will come back, or it will open another door. Someone else will mention something. And again, we do thank the Brazilian Portuguese team for all their hard work, as Mr. Kesh said. And I just see that ice block with all the fields radiating out. And the connections will be made, and the other groups will grow as well. So there's no worries, but it is our responsibility to start talking about these units, and that they are available to the churches, the mosques, the universities, the governments, and so on. And you never know, just go out with the correct intentions and explain what we're offering through the Kesh Foundation. I know this time it really is going towards midnight, because the Europeans have moved their clocks forward today to the Central European summertime. So it is heading to midnight, and we were trying to keep these meetings a little shorter. But it's beautiful to see the interaction, and the more knowledge we gain and share among each other, the more knowledge we'll be able to gain and share. So it's a beautiful work by all of us. Thank you, Alenka, as well, for all your translating, simulcasting that you do, let's say, and your whole team as well. And again, we're moving into this one planet, one nation, one race for world peace. So this is the direction it's going, and these systems will help to get there a little quicker. And Jefferson, did you? Yes, I see your mic open, please.
Hey, hello, Mark. Hello, everyone. You hear me, Mark?
Oh, clearly, yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's Jefferson Rodriguez from Brazil. First of all, wonderful meeting with Alex teaching, Jalal, and all our friends that your knowledge, it's amazing. I would like to share in the last cache plasma reactor group with Rix on the last Wednesday. I brought exactly the one experiment that I made with a headphone using only small cotton balls with a few drops of amino acids from the cups. And we can use it with sound or without sound. It's very easy to do. It's just a small balls and another experiments that I have made, but it's in the plasma. I think it's in the streamer. So I sent it to Rick and he just to share. And I think it's very powerful, at least to understand where even the position of the soul inside of and outside in our magnetosphere or in our aura. It's very interesting, the effect of it, depending on the position and it's very, very interesting experience. The same that Marie brought about the clothing and using the amino acid. I create a small ball with amino acid and I hang in my shower tub to have a shower as well with amino acids and to interact with our body amino acids as well. And so I would like to share with you
Sure.
all. It's a streamer.
Did you have
And,
the picture you wanted to share, Jefferson, of the headphones? I just remember it was pretty easy to put it together. Rick was impressed with it.
Yes, I can share, but one by one, because when I sent to Rick, I sent all the pictures at once. But if you want, I can try to share from here.
Sure. Let's let everyone see that weren't in the plasma reactor group. And again, the plasma reactor group is another public program that starts at 7 a.m. on Wednesday. So it's the public meeting, the 939-474-503, and you're all welcome to be part of it and bring your plasma experiments. Marie, I'm expecting you to be there. But very nice. Rick is always asking for people to share their plasma experiences.
Have you received it, Mark?
I'm seeing it right on the screen.
I don't know if you can read it. It's very easy, you see. It's just a small cotton ball and silver plastic tape and put some drops crossing from higher drops from the right to the left in the same straight, just to create different fields interaction of the same straight but crossing and using some kind of different salinity.
So they're connected to a piece of tape here, yes?
Yes, silver plastic tape. They are connected. So it's very easy.
And then he would take these and put them on each side of the headphone.
Yeah, I will share another one. Yeah. You see, just close it easily.
Okay, so you folded it in half.
Yes, and then just fix it in the headphone. See? Each side, you just put it in your wear. I did it, I think, in 10-15 minutes, if you have the amino acids, and it's very easy to do. And the effect, it's I felt very interesting in the physicality as well as in the emotion. And as well, maybe in the aura, I felt a very different temperature inside the body and the physicality. It
Jefferson,
increased and decreased. Yeah.
I have a question for you. Just looking at your
Yeah.
diagram, why did you reverse the field flow of the cup 2 from one side to the other? The other two are going from left to right in your image, but the middle one is going the other way.
Yes.
Did you have a reason for that?
Yes, to create different field strength and speed. So I put 3 drops of one amino acid in the right top and the same amino acid at the left side lower, just because they have the same field but different strength. The higher give to the lower.
Yes,
And,
I understand that. But what I was
yes.
talking about is the cup 1, the 1 drop is on the left and the 3 drops are on the right. So it goes from left to right.
It goes from the right to left, from the lower to the higher. Yeah.
Goes from the 1 drop to the 3 drops to the 1 drops.
Yeah, I use the 3 drops. In the middle, I use it.
The cup 3 is the same. It goes from the 3 drops to the 1 drop, but the cup 2 is the 3 drops are on the opposite side of the other 2. So the field flow is going different. And I wondered why.
Just the way that I did it when I was making, I said, because I changed the salinity in the number 2 and the
Maybe
2
the
position.
soul told him.
I put 1 drop in one side, but I put it more in the higher salinity of the amino acid, because I had amino acids with more salinity and without salinity. So I created as well a differential from the maybe the magnetic gravitational to the pH from the middle one. It's just an experiment, you know. We just try to create things. But that's the reason. And you can change. You can do with the other, I think, kind of amino acids, you know, that you feel maybe amino acids from kind of crystals or many stones. I've been looking at the composition of these materials, natural materials, so we can create different amino acids, so you can use it. But I think I don't feel any hungry when I use it. It makes different noises, and in my experience, you feel a lot of a shiver in the spine as well. It moves a lot of things, I think, because it interacts with the pineal gland and as well as the pituitary glands in the field strength. And I think it makes some movement. It's very interesting. You can use music as those fixed hertz music, like 432 or 800. There are many in the field strength in the matter state that we can use it to hold the physical brain from the soul of the physicality in the level, especially when you go to sleep or something, or just a relaxed time or nap during the day, so you can hold the brain kind of field strength in the physicality, in the soul of physicality, I think, in the emotion. Then I think we can interconnect easier with the higher, or even the torus, or the vortex that connect us with the higher level, I think, in my view. So that's it.